let me tell you a bit of a story time with Fauz. Drew, insert some story-esque music. Yes, welcome back everyone to episode 7 of Simply Simple.
We took a bit of a break and now we are back.
Just 1 week.
Just 1 week off. I hope everyone had a great week without us.
I hope you're
I
doing
can't imagine
well.
that, but I'm sure people have their own fun and
I
do their
thought
own things.
it was peaceful for some people, but for others, you may have really reached out into our DMs.
Yeah, it was very peaceful for me actually.
It was a nice break.
Yeah,
Sometimes the effort that you put into recording these episodes are more than you think.
exactly. A lot of sweat and tears. Not
Yeah.
not too much blood really.
Yeah. It's not like a terrible or like, a huge amount of setup, but it's just like, meal prep and Saturday plans. And so many people are getting married as well. Drew, I am the bridesmaid to a few weddings this year, and I'm very excited.
We can have an episode about bridesmaid duties. And you can
Yes.
tell everyone how to lead the way, as I'm sure you're doing with all your weddings coming up.
Yes.
But let's talk about what we're talking about, which is a fancy way of saying that, as we said, this is episode 7, and we are going to be talking about living at home and moving out for young Australians, or Generation Home.
Yes, this was one of the recent election hot topics as well. So good timing.
Good timing. We were talking about house prices, rental prices, the affordability crisis. We're just in crisis all around Australia, but
there's a lot of fun.
but we're steady amongst all of it. So let me give you the runway to take off.
Okay.
So for a lot of young Australians, the question of moving out of home is difficult. We crave our independence, but at the same time recognize the realities of affording rent or being able to afford a place to stay. So what we're going to be talking about are the impacts on us too, and for young people generally. Kick it off.
It's a good movie. I'd watch it. Well, Australia has witnessed a notable increase in more people our age living at home with their parents. So we, as always, love to share some stats. Drew's favorite. Where
Do you know what stats are like?
Oh my god, they're like bikinis. I don't know why I sounded British there. Pop it in the trailer again. Anyway, so in 2021, Drew, roughly half of all Australians aged 18 to 29 were living in their parental home, a marked increase compared to 20 years earlier. There is a huge trend that, oh gosh, there's a lot of conflicting stats. We have a lot of stats here as well, but nearly 1/3 of Australians aged 26 to 29 had not yet moved out. So there's more of a trend of saving and life taking place before prioritizing what was prioritized back in the days. Anyways, Drew, some questions. Feels very weird being back on camera, guys.
That was very mysterious.
It was very mysterious. No, you set the tone for it to be mysterious.
Yes, I will just add to what you said, is that even when people are moving out, it is with their partners or with housemates, their friends, strangers, but they're not moving out alone. They're moving out with someone else. So I think the amount of people who are actually living out by themselves is also decreasing quite a bit in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So that's the background that we're in, and that's
things are getting expensive, and as Drew said, there are a lot of crises everywhere. But some key questions that we have: how have living arrangements for young people changed in Australia? You just touched on that a bit. Any economic pressures, social norms, cultural backgrounds playing a role as well? So we'll get into it in this episode.
Of course. So we're going to be going through some of the economic reasons and some of the social reasons why this may be the case. And just as an FYI, we are talking about the Australian context, but a lot of what we're talking about is quite common or quite a trend across
Mm.
other Western societies such as the UK, the US, and Canada.
Mm.
So it is not unique to Australia, and a lot of other
Oh, definitely not.
people around the world feel very similar
And you
pressures.
see a lot of like, TikTok videos and people online who have vlogged their experience of moving back out, maybe to New York, and then moving back into home because of different factors. But the biggest one is the economic factor. And Drew, I did have stats around UK and
UK?
America. Did I sound British
You
again?
did. I think you did, yes.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. But I'm not going to phalange around for those. I don't know.
Phalange around.
You can start doing the word repeats. But we basically looked into some stats around the world. So there has just been a general increase overall in those individuals in our age bracket who have not moved out of home under 30 years old. So there's a lot of things happening, Drew.
Am I kickstarting? Are you kickstarting?
We're already kickstarted. The plane is in the air.
Okay, we're
cruising.
We're a Boeing plane.
Yes.
Anything can happen.
Yes. The best of the best.
Some of them not too good.
Yes.
Sorry, Boeing. So why has it happened? Well, I'm going to talk a bit about economic reasons. Have a bit of a riff. So, I think the most obvious reason, maybe not the most important, but the most obvious at least, is just the acceleration of house prices across. We live in Sydney, so we can talk about Sydney. Sydney in particular, but also in other places in Australia and the world. So as wages and as people's income have remained relatively steady, house prices have continued to shoot up. So
what ranking does Sydney have again?
Look, it's debatable,
3, 4.
but we've seen numbers from 7. It's top 10, I'd say, is a pretty accurate estimation.
Sure.
I don't know where you'd put it there.
I mean, even if you're in the top 10, you're definitely expensive no matter what spot you are in the 10.
Exactly. So when you look at it that way, in the sense that your money is going less further in terms of what you can buy, that's quite a big part. And just if you're a young Australian, a young person living in Australia, you just can't afford to move out as much as you would like to. And this goes for both renting and buying. It's not just the house prices are going up, it's just rents are going up at quite a higher rate as well, which is why we're getting to the point where, to a lot of people, I think you talk to your friends, you talk to people around you, and what they tend to say is, I would love to move out. I'd love to live outside of my home, my family home, but I just can't afford it. And that is perhaps the most obvious.
It's very fair enough.
And maybe it's the most important reasons, but we'll give you some other food for thought.
For sure. I think also a lot of people are picking up, another side hustle on top of their 9 to 5. I know that doggy daycare is a very popular side hustle at the moment. So that's interesting and quite sad, knowing that your 9 to 5 can't really be sufficient enough in this economy, or at least to afford the Sydney lifestyle. It could be different if you move to maybe another location. But I do agree with housing price increases. The insane queues to even inspect a rental property is astronomical, Drew. It is huge. And the fact that, I've had colleagues and friends who've tried to find a rental property and they've been unsuccessful until like a week before their actual or the existing place or their lease is over, where they've finally found a place. So there's a lot of competition. You have inflation happening, you have worldwide events, for example, like the tariffs going on, and just a lot of conflicts that are impacting a lot of different things economically, which has that domino effect. And that's why you see more people trying to grip into multiple income streams.
Of course, as they say, it's the economy, stupid.
Economy stupid.
It's the economy, stupid. It's like a phrase. I think they use it in the US.
I feel like ever
US
since we came out with that trailer of me repeating your words, I feel so like not even self-conscious, but more aware of what I am repeating now.
But let's pivot a bit away from the economy.
Yes.
Do you think there's anything else that might be impacting some of the trends that we talked about
Yes.
earlier in this
I
episode?
thought you wouldn't ask, but you did. Well, relating it back to us, I am currently studying, and we decided that we wanted to save to purchase a property, hopefully next year, fingers crossed. And we have moved outside of home in the past, but we moved back into our parental homes to save money, and also to the fact that we wanted to and still want to travel. We have a few travel plans, and ever since moving back in, was it 2021 when we moved out?
2021, yes.
2021 when we moved out. From 2021 to date, we've traveled to New Zealand, we've traveled to Japan, South Korea, etc. So we've had the opportunity to travel to what would have been money to, pay someone else's pocket for renting. It's not a bad thing, but everyone has each to their own.
Yes, we speak from a position of relative privilege, so
Yes,
we'll acknowledge that when we
absolutely
talk about the things we've done. But we'll talk about our experience later. Let's just talk more general socially. Is there anything else that you've observed apart from money?
For sure. Cultural reasons as well. A lot of my networks don't move out until marriage is pursued. So that's one particular factor that I've
Like
noticed.
that marriage pursued. You just chase marriage.
Oh yeah, you just chase marriage. You try find the one, and if you're really eager to move out of home, you pursue it. You race for it. But yeah, so cultural reasons can play a huge factor, and I think that if you come from a familial background where independence and moving out of home isn't recognized or isn't kind of brought onto you at a young age, then that's a factor that plays into part where you don't really think about moving out at all until, like I said, marriage, until you get married. So that's that one particular reason as well. And also that draws onto safetyism as well, where some parents aren't perhaps fully ready for their child to move out. Maybe they're uncomfortable with the idea. As we said, the sociocultural factors as well that play into a part.
Well, I think on that, I think also the child is not comfortable with moving out.
Yes.
They haven't faced that adversity in their life. So to them, the simple option is just to stay at home.
Yeah.
And that's just what they're comfortable with.
That's right.
I think just going back to the marriage point, I think we talked a bit, like you said, we talked a bit about this in episode 1, where people are getting married at a later age. And I think if you look historically, one of the big drivers for moving out, not the main one, not necessarily the only one, sorry, but a key one is you get married to your partner and then you move out with them and you build your own family. But that's happening a bit later in life, so people don't have that necessarily driving them forward. But I think also culturally, there's some cultures that do prioritize people living within one family unit. So Indian culture, for example, it's very common for multiple generations of families to live in the same household, and I'm sure that's the case from what I've heard with some other cultures as well. So if you are from maybe an immigrant family, there's just less reason, or you're less inclined to move out because that's just not necessarily how you understand moving out to be about, or how you see its importance, or how you see it playing in your own life.
And I think, like, if you have that privilege of your parents, maybe even your grandparents in Australia, for example, living in the same household, maybe you and your partner don't really see a reason to move out of the house because, you might be thinking of kids, or you have the comfort of, food being made. I mean, obviously you are making your own food, but like, having those privileges, if you have those, you may not feel the need to move out as well. But also, one point I wanted to mention as well, in terms of the delayed marriage, a lot of individuals, particularly females, are pursuing more challenging careers. If you look at careers like becoming a doctor, being in the law, those kind of careers do take a lot of years of study if you want to kind of not necessarily climb the ranks, but explore the industry and kind of further your career into different areas in that particular industry. Then you might be more adept to working overseas, you might want to work interstate, like, things, different factors, short-term accommodations and short-term career opportunities kind of feed into the fact of why some people may not choose to move out.
Of course. So there's quite a few reasons, and it's not necessarily as simple as the money. It doesn't explain everything.
Experiences, cultural reasons, etc.
Exactly. And I just want to talk now about our own experiences. I think you mentioned a bit about it, and that we moved out in 2021 during the height of COVID.
Yes. We actually got a pretty good deal on that apartment. We were renting right opposite of Hyde Park, and that was a blissful commute.
Yes, we used to walk to work. It's hard to believe. We also do walk to work, but from a public transport station. So it's not the same.
Well, it's quite interesting when you saw like your workplace from your apartment and vice versa. Like, oh my God, I was sleeping there like a few hours ago, and then bam, now I'm at this location down the road working. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, but why don't you talk a bit about our experience moving out in an early age? How do all these factors that we talked about play into that?
Yes, of course. Well, throwing it back to episode 1, as you may not know, and if you haven't watched already, hello to our new subscribers.
Can we just point? Here's the link for those on YouTube.
The link will be somewhere, and if it's not here, because
blame me.
We'll link it down below. But hello and welcome to our new subscribers. Going back to episode 1, it took us quite some time to be on the okay with parents, and I think
was that episode 2, I think.
Oh, that was episode 2. Oh, number 1 is
dating.
Yes, the fish in the sea.
Yes, the salmon. Yeah.
Wow, there's a lot of episodes. I can't keep up anymore.
It's countless, really.
Countless, yes. A lot of.
We're just a clickbait content machine.
Yes. Oh my gosh, we're the new. Wow, I forgot that director's name. We're the new Ben Stiller. We're nowhere near Ben Stiller. Anyways,
this is as scary and spooky as Ben Stiller.
It's very mysterious.
No one knows what we're going to say next. It's like a mystery.
Yes. Well, my point about like it took us some time to kind of get onto a good level with the parents, and then we were still quite young at uni. Like that is definitely factually correct in that regard, and we wanted to spend those uni years and early corporate years to explore, spend time with each other, do different activities, experiences, travel, a lot of things. And obviously moving out did come to mind, but I feel like when you're young, and obviously we'll talk a little bit about this in terms of my experience of moving out, never really was fed into me at a young age. I'm not sure if it's the same for you growing up, where you kind of wanted some independence. But anyways, 2021, we moved out into Hyde Park, and that was a cool experience. We were young, our bones were working, they weren't creaking, we were cooking meals, and we still are cooking, but we had a lot of independence. And the COVID price that we got for our rental was quite good, and it was like 1 bedroom, 1 garage space, 24/7 concierge.
Yeah, 2 bathrooms, 1 bedroom.
2 bathrooms too.
Yeah, very, very important.
And a washing machine as well.
And so it was under $600.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent price, and something like that would be over like $800.
These days the parking spot itself is $600.
Yeah, that's right.
Let alone everything else. So.
That was a good price until our rental increased by quite a substantial amount. And Dhruv and I remember that one night we were sitting on the couch and contemplating, like, this life is nice, but we also need to think a bit sustainably from a financial perspective and map out more around our life and how the future years looked like. So we moved back into our house.
So just on that, you talked about from a financial perspective. So what role do you think all those economic reasons played into that decision? If we were perhaps in a different situation, different economic environment, would that calculation have changed?
Are you going to answer your question? I'm like, oh, no, I think hard.
Would you have to, as in, how much of that decision was because of housing prices accelerating, FOMO, feeling of missing out, or rental prices increasing, rising cost of living? How did all of that play in? And did that override, or does that play a big part compared to some of the other social reasons that we talked about, such as studying, cultural reasons, the way we grew up? Like, what do you think was the dominant
Reason why we moved out?
Yes.
Okay. The first is financial. Both of us couldn't. And I'm just going to list them. It's not that it's necessarily the priority. It's just that the things that contributed to the factor or decision to move out. But the first is we couldn't necessarily justify that substantial rental increase. And that was when there was a bit of a staggered increase back into the office. So I suppose realtors saw a trend of more corporate people coming back to maybe their city apartments, or people who lived hour 2 hours from Sydney moving back into the city, so hence the rental increases as well. Second is what we wanted to do with excess money, or what we could do with the excess money. We knew that we really wanted to travel together, so no regrets there. Really good times. Third was I was studying. I was at the peak first few months actually of my degree.
I think by the time we moved out, you were 1 year in at that point.
And I think just kind of the overall like finances of like bills and other kind of utility expenses that we were paying for, we couldn't really justify. I think it just came down to, we're still young. We don't have to be trapped into bills right now. We could be doing quite a bit with excess money. And I think the kind of third, fourth segue, whatever I'm up to, is just a segue of future planning as well. So wanting to put a bit more into our finances moving forward for wedding and future travels. We weren't engaged at this point, but we knew that there were plans to progress. So we wanted some kind of safeguard.
Yeah, I think that all sounds pretty right. I think
he was grading me. That's a big essay question on the exam.
It's a B plus.
B plus. You're a D minus.
Yeah, I'll cop it. That was that was
You're an A plus. Sorry.
Wow, I didn't deserve that. But thank you.
Look at you leaning. You're a cool guy, just leaning. I can't.
Yes, for the audio listeners, I am leaning because I'm
cozy.
Because I went to the gym and my body is very sore, so yeah. I'm very crippled.
Not doing squats and deadlifts after a while is legitimately ow.
Exactly. But yeah. As I was saying, that was a good answer, very good answer, and I think that all sounded about right, because in an ideal world, it would be possible to live outside of home and still have enough savings to save up for travel, save up for buying a house or buying a place to live in. But I think it just got to the point where you had to make some sort of compromise and sacrifice. And I think what we thought of, and everyone has their own interests and their own decision and their own preferences, but at least for us, it was the fact that we could maybe sacrifice a bit now with the idea we save up a bit more, but still be able to enjoy life in the sense that we can spend a bit more money on things like travel. And obviously that's not the same for everyone, and we're not saying that everyone will be in the same position as us, where we do have the privilege of having a family home to stay in and to save, and we recognize that not everyone...
That was one of the factors, yeah.
That's right, not everyone has that, so very fully aware of that. But that's what went into our decision making at the time.
I am so sorry, I didn't realize. I didn't mention that as well. We have the privilege of having both our parents' house, so we kind of were quite comfortable with what we have, and we didn't really see the reason why we would need to like renew our rent or move elsewhere. But I think if I look back, it was more for the experience and trying something new. And I feel like I say this in almost every episode, but you don't know until you don't know. And that was something for us. We did get a lot of benefits out of, moving out. We kind of had more independence and even more street smartness, I guess, in living outside. No, I do not know how to make my rorties round, so do not come for me. But yeah, a few factors as to why people do not move out, and it's each to their own. So it's not really, it doesn't necessarily come down to the financial aspect, but as we said, there can be cultural expectations and such that feed into it.
Of course, and I think if it was possible to go living back outside, but still having that standard of living, I think that would become a lot more of a serious consideration. But I
Yeah.
think just given everything in Sydney at the moment in terms of economic reasons, that just wasn't possible. But I think some of the cultural reasons played a part. I think that one
Yeah.
of the reasons we were so comfortable is because in our culture this is just normal. There's no stigma or pressure to move out early. If anything, it's the opposite.
Interesting. It's
Yeah.
the opposite for me, isn't it?
Well, I mean, even with you, people like no one's kicking you out of the home, being like,
Yeah.
find your own way.
Yeah,
It's
definitely
very
not.
supportive
Yeah.
in these cultures
Yeah,
where
we're very privileged to have supportive parents and be in the position where our parents aren't overly strict. So they did, they do have that trust in us that we'll take care of ourselves, etc. So, yeah, very interesting few years. And I wanted to touch on an aspect of your question around like if housing prices were cheaper, if rent was cheap, etc., would we still have moved out? Honestly, probably not. I think because the main agreement that we kind of talked about was more around finishing our degree and kind of we have some personal goals and goals together that we really want to achieve. And I feel like I would rather and we rather pursue those before moving out and kind of locking ourselves and not necessarily being able to like reach those goals. But this is the age where we can pivot, whether it's pivoting jobs, whether it's pivoting interests and pursuing hobbies and paying for like that course that you've wanted to do. Why not?
yes, so we can talk about some of the impacts and consequences, but before we do so, we're gonna go towards our
Is
break.
there a game?
There is another game. This is the third game of the
Very
podcast.
exciting.
It's called Do I Really Have to Choose?
The- telling you, you can really.
It's really just our way of saying would you rather, but in like
Can be
a
cuffed
in
and still
a more
choose.
serious, depressing but fun,
Yeah.
very fun context.
Yes, I feel like
Are you stoked?
I am very stoked. That's not even a 5. That's
You are you're much more stoked than I sound.
my smile and my cheeks are hurting from my smile. That's
Yes,
how
for the
stoked
audio
I am.
listeners, her lips are going towards her eyes. just touching them. That's how wide the grin is.
All right, let's play the game. I'm ready.
All right, time to play the game. So now this is just a game, so please don't take offense. Please do. It doesn't
Disclaimer.
really matter.
We
Okay.
should actually insert a disclaimer at the description of like every description box. Why haven't we done that? We may do that if we remember.
That's all right. We're not afraid. Okay. So
We are fearless.
would you rather pay $400 a week for a shoebox studio
Girl.
close to work,
Oh my god.
or live with your parents rent free and commute 90 minutes each way to work?
See, every time I think of shoebox, I think of all those people who live in New York being like, "Oh, I live in this like so-called shoebox, but my view is great of the Brooklyn Bridge."
You don't have that here.
I don't have that here. In
It's an actual shoebox
there's an
studio.
actual- Well, I have.
You're looking at the UTS building.
That is the Brooklyn Bridge. I don't mind the commute 90 minutes each way because honestly, that's probably what I do anyway. So that's nothing. But how about you?
So what was your answer? Sorry.
Commute 90 minutes each way.
I'll bear the brunt of that. I just hear all the complaints. So, from my perspective, I'd rather she live in the shoebox
You-
because I'll hear a lot less. Oh, my commute is so long. This is so painful.
I mean,
For my mental sanity, I wish you chose option
fingers
one.
crossed not next year. It's just that you didn't specify the location, so I'm assuming I'm commuting from the west.
I'm probably gonna also choose the commute option because I like disassociating on public as long as I'm not driving
You
it.
make progress
I can-
on your Kindle.
Yeah, that's right. And I can just disassociate. I can just like live in another universe in my mind.
Oh, well, that what?
Yeah, in my commute, I don't have to pay attention.
Different universe.
Yeah, you know when you sit there and you're not really there, you're just kind of your
Yeah.
mind is just completely elsewhere.
Oh, that's happened so many times. It's actually, oh my god, I don't
So
even
that's
know.
why I don't mind the commute. Okay, so would you rather live with 3 strangers in a very nice place, but you're paying rent, or live where you are now, but you have zero air conditioning, and we'll make it even tougher.
Wow.
Your access to fans is a lot more limited.
Limited.
Yeah, limited.
What is limited?
Just you
Like
don't you don't
one
have
per room.
you don't have one in your bedroom,
Oh, okay.
so you can't sleep with a fan or aircon.
Oh, okay. Well, I would live with no aircon and limited fan because I, I mean, I promise, like, it's not terrible living conditions, but like,
You'd live with 3 strangers.
no, I would live in a place with no aircon and limited fans because, look, I can't live with strangers, dude. Like, I need to live with someone who I know, who's maybe from like my friend circle or with you. I cannot live with strangers because more than likely they're going to piss me off with the way they treat the kitchen and organize things. How about you?
I would love to be able to be cool enough to say I live with 3 strangers, but I think in reality, I will probably choose to sleep with no aircon. And it's like one of those like challenge videos you see. Like I wake up at 5 a.m. every day. Like think of all the content you could create.
It's like a
I
sauna.
sleep with no aircon. Like people go crazy. Like
Yeah.
the commercial opportunity.
Well, there's some benefits
For
from
that.
commercial opportunity. What are you trying to get me to say that?
I'm just thinking from a content standpoint.
Can I just say, wow, my train of thought went a bit bogus right now. Okay. Yes. Make sure you've cut all of that, Drew. Not all of it, sorry.
Some of it.
Some of it. Well, the heat is good for your body. It removes all the toxins as well. And if you go to a warm country like Singapore, like that would have really helped adopt it. There goes my agenda. All right, next one.
No, we don't prepare for this. I agree. So I think to summarize, heat gets rid of bad toxins. Strangers put bad toxins in. Is that right? Is that accurate? Yes. Okay.
It could be.
It could be.
More than likely with the strangers aspect.
Okay. So we're going to be in a situation where you live either 90 minutes away from work, or you live somewhere, and every day you have to wake up at 6 a.m. no matter what, because of like an alarm.
I don't want to flex, but I wake up at 5 a.m. every day.
That's like a...
excluding Saturday and especially Sundays.
I just passed the ball for you for like a layup, It's just...
I'd wake up at 6 a.m. every day, 1 hour sleep in from.
Okay, I'll leave the frame, and you can talk about. You can do like a monologue about your productivity.
Yes, let's talk about setting yourself up for success.
Okay. Let's.
Yes. How about you though?
Comment below if you want to hear about Fauzia's success. Okay.
Why would you want to listen to me?
I don't mind waking up at 6 a.m. Again, like it's
nice.
You can do like a workout. You can do other things.
Have a slow morning as well. Yeah, meditate.
Exactly. Okay, so would you rather share a bathroom with strangers or live 15?
Just skip one?
Yeah, well, it's too similar, so I thought I'd skip it. So would you...
You'll never know.
Could be anything. Would you rather share a bathroom with strangers or live 15 minutes away from a washing machine?
Wait, how many strangers are we talking about? Like maybe 3 that we're living with?
Maybe just one.
One stranger?
We'll start with one, and
Okay.
we'll work up from there if needed.
Is that one stranger like my flatmate, housemate?
Okay, well, we'll do 2 scenarios. One, it's where it's a random, and 2 is where it's like a friend, but a friend who you secretly don't think is very clean.
Oh, God. You're exposed.
You don't have to name this person. It's just a hypothetical.
No, is there a person? Are there people? I would... Oh, that's hard. Okay, look, since you have given me 2 scenarios, one with that friend, because I feel like friend to friend, we can really make some hygienic improvements if that's the case. But if it's just sharing with one stranger, is it the same consistent stranger? Is it Jenny walking in every day, or is it like Jenny, Max, Samuel, anyone?
We'll start with just one, Jenny.
Okay, well, that's fine because at least I know it's Jenny using the washing machine. But think about it, you're tired and you have a mountain of laundry, or you have a flight the next week, and then you're like, shoot, I really have to live 15 minutes away. That's effort. And then more than likely, you would have to, from this question, you'd probably have to pay for the washing machine 15 minutes away. But I get the impression that if you're sharing a bathroom with strangers, you're not necessarily paying for it, but that's weird.
No, you're not paying it. Yeah, maybe in rent, but this is rent. This is a
I'd
rent.
go shit strangers.
This is a rent exclusive question.
Yeah, I'd go strangers because I feel like comparing, like, even with like Jenny, Samuel, that one friend compared to like hundreds of people using that washing machine, that's disgusting.
That might be the most surprising thing you've ever said to me.
I know.
So how many strangers would they need to be for you to choose the washing machine option?
First of all, I wouldn't go with strangers.
But you just chose them. So how many strangers would you need?
3 is my favorite number, so I'm going to go 3 max.
Okay, so the 4th, you're like, I will just cop the 15 minutes.
4th, you need to walk 15 minutes away. Do not use, out of service. Moving on.
Okay. Would you rather live next to a loud Airbnb or have a barking dog nearby?
Oh, dude. Our neighbors, every time like we get like a new neighbor, because the house next to us is, I believe, under rent. No surprise, there's always a barking dog. So I'm just gonna go with the barking dog because I feel like I can just close the window. Noise canceling headphones exist. I'd do that. If I was next to a loud Airbnb, what are you doing anyway? I thought there were no house parties allowed. Must be a nice Airbnb then.
See, you can just probably report them maybe and cut their service.
That's a lot of effort.
I would probably choose Airbnb because I don't like dogs barking.
I don't like dogs barking.
It's very sad. It could be a sad thing.
It could
be a good thing, but it also could be sad. I don't want to think about the sad part.
But let me tell you a bit of a story time with Fauz. Drew, insert some story-esque music.
Ooh.
Not. Oh. Anyways, so there was a dog, and anyways, so I forgot the dog's name, but this person I went to primary and high school with, and he happened to move to the house next door. And I need to ask her what the name of the dog was, but we used to feed the dog some arrowroot biscuits. Absolutely adorable. And then one day that dog, like, eventually day by day, like, he kept digging like underneath, there goes my gender again, underneath the fence, and then the hole underneath the fence kept getting bigger and bigger. And I think maybe the dog was just very like, oh, there's a lot of biscuits on the other side of the fence, and one day came running into our backyard because the hole was big enough. I forgot what the name was, but anyways, if I remember the name, it'll be inserted here if I remember. But yes.
Okay, so we'll speed through this really quickly. Okay, last one. Would you rather do all house chores in a shared place for reduced rent? You're sharing with friends or strangers. Or would you rather pay full rent, but no one there cleans up at all? What would you prefer?
I'll do all house chores for reduced rent. Like, I'm pretty, like, quick at doing. If there's multiple chores, I'm pretty quick at doing it, and I'll do them well.
Wow, very, very good of you.
Cleaning and chores are therapeutic generally, and I think you can, if you have a long list of chores, you can really separate that into different days. So you can really, find a way to do them. Yeah. How about you? He's like, chores?
I mean,
chores?
All chores is a lot, and
the amount of chores that we do.
Think about all the time you have to do chores. But then people
can
never
take
clean.
The bins out.
That's true. I'm great at bins.
You can bring the Woolies bags in.
I would pay full rent. I can deal a bit more with uncleanliness than you, I think.
Pay full rent and live with. Yes. I think that's a very valid response.
It is a valid response. I'll differ from you.
Shout out to the boys, but there was, what Airbnb were you guys at? How many of you were in that Airbnb?
That's like 10.
That's a crazy amount. See, that's a lot of claustrophobic, unhygienic scariness on my end.
Okay.
Anyways, that was fun.
Yes, that was a good game.
Yes.
We did some things. We learned a bit of how we live and how we prefer to live. So I take it you're not going to have any applications open for roommates?
Mm-mm.
Okay, that sounds about right. So let's pivot.
That's me. Here I am speaking to my cool Kango crew. Shout out to you guys of, renting something out with a harbor view, having a spectacular business idea. Those are the only flatmates. Of course you as well. Okay, next one, Druvish.
Okay, I think you've offended everyone who's not part of that crew.
Sorry. There has to be limitations. Let's talk about impacts now.
Yes, so we talked a bit earlier, much earlier, about our experiences and people moving or not moving out of home. So what's the impacts of all of this? Like, what does that mean for young people? What does that mean for society generally? I will kick it off with talking about pride and confidence. I think a lot of people get satisfaction from doing things themselves, doing things independently, gaining that sense of independence. And what we're really doing is we're delaying that feeling of satisfaction, that people feel fulfillment with themselves. And I think that's a bit of a concern currently, because you look at a lot of young people, especially, don't feel very optimistic about the future that they live in. And arguably, if they had perhaps more feeling of control over their lives and more ability to feel like they made a positive contribution, even if it's just towards a place that they're living in, that in itself could be quite in my view, a big bonus and a big advancement in terms of their overall satisfaction with life, and also just increase their confidence to move into adulthood and do all these adulting things that we just have to do once we move out from high school. So that's probably one of the, I think, the biggest impacts that I can see in
Can I
terms of
just
this.
clarify? Is it the impacts of moving out or not moving out?
The impacts of the difficulties of being able to move out, whether those are economic or cultural
kind of
difficulties.
both.
Yeah, so we're saying that people can't move out. What's the impact about that in society?
Sure.
So that's how I just wanted to
Yeah.
kickstart that for you.
Well, the second factor is a mental health concern. Online, you'll see a lot of people saying, would you move out to have more independence and mental freedom, or would you stay with your parental units at the sacrifice of your mental health? Look, I think each case is unique, but I think if you choose to, it really just depends on a unique case by case basis. But as Drew said, if you are because the economy is getting expensive and you are with your parental units, even if you do anticipate to have plans in the future, but you can't do it just yet, you may feel a sense of feeling behind and unhappy to an extent. But like I said, unique basis, if you choose to move out anyway, you might have that mental freedom that you craved.
I like parental unit. It's like friend squadron.
Yeah.
It's like a very military.
Friend squadron.
Yeah, it's like a military term. I thought I'd just jump in. But just on those mental health concerns, I think one of the issues as well is that I think it's easy if you can move back to your family home if you have an environment that is somewhat supportive or you get along with your family. But if you don't get along with your family, or if there are a lot of underlying problems there that make it quite difficult on your mental health,
maybe it's not unsafe even.
Yeah, that's right. Then it becomes a lot more tricky because you're either sacrificing a lot of your financial flexibility and financial freedom, or you're sacrificing your mental health. And I think that's a very unfair trade for someone to have to make, that is probably getting more common given the rise in unaffordability. And also, just on the mental health, I think people also have to move out of the city. So if you grew up in Sydney, for example, and Sydney's becoming more unaffordable, suddenly you're moving out to another place. It could be a more rural area. It could be into a different state.
I know a lot of people who've moved to like Brisbane and they really enjoy it.
Yeah, and some people will certainly enjoy it, but others will have a bit of difficulties because they're not near their friends and they're not near their family anymore, and that can have its own problems. So I think it's hard. It's not always an easy transition in terms of moving out of state or moving out of your area that you're familiar with. So that's a big adjustment. I think people have to do that a lot more now because it's not if you live in one of those more unaffordable cities, it's not always possible to find a place to live that is within your budget in those areas.
I do want to plug in episode 3 as well. So try and avoid making comparisons to other people who have had the opportunity to move out or are privileged enough to stay at their parents' house. May have different circumstances to you. Building that mental resilience is really, really important. And if you know there are good things ahead of you, sometimes you just have to hang in there and ride the wave. But again, everyone's unique. So whether you move out, whether you stay at home, it's no big deal. Just as long as you get to A to B in the goals you want to achieve, you're just fine. All right.
Yeah, and I think we'll just quickly touch on 2 more things. I think one is the self-development part. I think when you move out of home, you have to do a lot more things. Yeah, I'm just doing some stretching. For those audio listeners, I'm just raising my shoulder. Very comfortable. But when you move out of home, you have to do things like do chores, do cooking. That might be things you don't ordinarily do in your family home. So having those skills, developing them is quite important when someday most people will have to eventually move away from their home.
And I guess the downside is, like, especially because we were doing it at a young age, it was kind of things that we knew obviously how to do, but at that kind of age period or period of time, we couldn't necessarily justify like doing every single chore. Like, that's the age to explore and travel and progress in our careers.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got a few different things playing into that as well, and I think that all just ties to delayed life experiences. We're just doing things at a lot later age, and that's less time to experiment and less time to find your identity. So
Spooky.
very spooky. So that's most of the impacts of what we've talked about. So they're all quite serious. Some people will feel them more than others. So that's the world and society we live in. And maybe it will change and maybe it won't.
Yeah.
So what are some final thoughts? Let's wrap this episode up. We've been talking for nearly 50 minutes.
Very impressive. We're actually bang on 50 minutes. Almost. Well, I go back to my point of whether you move out or whether you stay with your parents, it's a unique case by case basis. So, really, what helps is making a pros and cons list of, if you want to move out, what are the pros of doing so and what are the downsides of doing so, and vice versa if you are going to move back to your parents' house. It is an expensive world, and often one thing that we didn't touch on as well is the whole multiple like income streams as well. I never really had a lot of knowledge on that growing up, so I think that everyone's put in different challenges that they have to encounter and face. So it's not necessarily easy going to pursue a multiple income route as well, particularly when it's something that, if you have immigrant parents as well, it's quite new to them, and you're kind of left to learn it on yourself. And I think the last little thought that I have is that it is absolutely okay to do whatever is best for you, whatever slots in. You can be like us where we moved out for a year just to experience that kind of aspect of our life. If you want to move out for the purpose of traveling or studying abroad, you do that. So follow what your heart desires.
Yeah, that's right. And I think even with us, there were, a few drawbacks. Obviously we couldn't see each other as much, and that's got its own difficulties.
That is terrible.
Yeah, of course. So it's not necessarily an easy thing to do, and you're going to have to make a trade-off or sacrifice either way. But I hope this episode helped in just explaining some of the reasons and our experience and what that can do, and maybe it made you think, which will be good or bad. If you don't want to think, then don't think. Some people just want to relax and listen.
Fair enough.
Which is cool. So yeah, that wraps up episode 7 of the Simply Simple podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening, and we will be back soon, with or without me.
Are you gonna end every episode off with that line? That's Droop's tagline.
One day you might just do a solo show, right?
Oh, I thought you were gonna do one. I'm pretty sure there's a period where I will be out of office doing some bridesmaid duties. So maybe we'll have our first guest.
Maybe you can do a podcast with the bridesmaids,
Oh, that'll be fun.
and I will sit this one out.
All right. Well, we'll tune into episode 8 eventually. If you have any ideas, podcast episodes, or do you have to choose responses from any of the would you rathers that we said, you can drop them in the comments or message us. And yeah, welcome to our channel for all the new subscribers who have joined. We're glad to have you on board and share with you our life in our 20s.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting experience. Don't get too disillusioned to the new people.
Yes,
We won't hurt or bite.
Very ominous, this episode, huh?
I know. I'm just trying to make it. Did I tell you, like, suspense that's the key part?
It's all Ben Stiller-esque.
Very, very Ben Stiller-esque. All right, that's a wrap, folks.
All right, say goodbye.
Bye.
Do a big stretch.